go. It says it's being recorded. All right, so good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this. That is the fourth and final presentation in our webinar series that's focused on the Achievement of Excellence in Procurement Award. I'm Carrie Mathis, and I am proudly serving as the AEP officer for the National Procurement Institute. I want to welcome you all and thank you for joining us today. Before I get started with the presentation, I have just a few housekeeping items to review. The session is being recorded, so I'll ask that all attendees please ensure that your connection is maintained on mute throughout the presentation, unless of course you have questions. That's what this session is for, right, is to do a final wrap up and questions. But if you don't mind just staying on mute for the duration until we get to a Q&A portion, that will be helpful to make sure that everybody is respectful of all of the attendees and their ability to hear the questions or hear the presentation today. We are recording it. The recording will be available on the website for free on-demand access once we conclude this. So if you have colleagues, friends, counterparts, or just want a refresher at some point in the future, you'll be able to access it on the AEP or on the NPI website under the AEP tab, and I'll point that out here in a little bit. That way you can access it if you need a refresher. Please feel free to utilize the chat feature to pose any questions along the way, and I'll aspire to get through as many of those as possible before the session ends. And again, we're really grateful for Axia Cooperative, who is our sponsor for the AEP webinar series this year. As one of our supporter organizations, Axia continues to support the AEP award program, with this being their second straight year of sponsoring this webinar series. So certainly thankful to Axia Cooperative, to Ken for joining us today. I'd like to introduce Mr. Ken Heckman from Axia Cooperative and ask you, Ken, if you don't mind sharing with us a little bit of detail about Axia Cooperative before we kick off the session.
Yeah, thanks, Carrie. Appreciate it. Thank you to everyone for allowing us. We're delighted to sponsor the AEP series and these WebExes, these webinars. Axia Cooperative is a nationwide cooperative. We're fairly new, but we have a unique distinction of exclusively working with lead agencies that have won the Achievement of Excellence in Procurement Award. So all of our leads are AEP recipients. And that means it's kind of our good housekeeping seal of approval. We trust that if you've been awarded and honored with the award, that you do things the right way, and it's kind of the start of our due diligence. So you can trust that your fellow AEP recipients are doing a good job. And so we've got a number of contracts out there for you to look at. We welcome your opportunity. We welcome you to visit our website, axiacoop.org. I have been in the cooperative space for 3 decades. I had hair when I started, but really am a big supporter of the practitioner community, and in particular NPI and the AEP Awards. So we're just delighted to be a sponsor, and welcome a conversation with any of you who wants to explore more about what we're doing. Or just cooperative purchasing in general. But thank you, Carrie, and I'll turn it back over to you. This is the fourth in a great series, and I know your applications are due in just a few days, so I don't want to gobble up your time here. I just want to wish you well and good luck with this year's application, and I'm sure everyone will be delighted with the outcome. So God bless you, and we'll talk to you soon. Good luck.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you again for sponsoring and for joining us today. I just want to mention to everybody that Axia Cooperative, again, like what Ken mentioned, they exclusively utilize AEP award-winning agencies to serve as their lead agencies for their solicitation. So that's something for you to keep in mind if you're interested in serving as a lead agency. It can be utilized towards satisfying criteria 16 cooperative procurement strategy. So for those of you that maybe don't yet achieve that criteria and maybe want to, that could be a good opportunity to work towards being able to achieve that particular criteria, is serving as a lead agency. And the model that Axia Cooperative has adopted is really solely focusing on those agencies that have achieved the award. So I think that's a great connection, a great potential alignment for your agency if you're interested in serving as a lead agency. Feel free to reach out to Ken directly and to inquire about how to make that happen. So to get started, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and start working through just some of the details that I wanted to share with you as we work through the final series. Can you guys see my screen that has the NPI website on it? Any thumbs up, thumbs down? Thumbs up. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Because I have a couple screens, so I want to make sure we're sharing the right one. Thank you, Doris. A couple things that I want to go through briefly as we do our wrap up is some of the resources and things to focus on the AEP portion of the website. So again, we're on the NPI website, and if we hover over the AEP award tab, we've got a lot of drop downs there. So I want to just kind of go through quickly a couple of those that will be useful for you. Obviously, the application and submittal portal is where you will access the open water platform to go in and initiate your application. So for those of you who may not have started yet, that's the direct link to be able to go into the application portal. You would just click on this orange button and proceed through the login process. Noting on this page also that there's the 2025 summary of changes document that is delineating all of the changes that we've made to the application since last year. And then you could also download the 2025 AEP application if you want a hard copy to kind of track along with as you're doing your criteria development and upload. So those resources are all available on this particular page of the website. If you hover over AEP award area and you come down here, you notice a pop out to the right, which says applicant resources. That's new this year. So if you haven't checked that out, I would encourage you to do so. The first thing on the page is actually a video, a tutorial that had been created about creating your application in a new platform. And so that will kind of give you the feel for how to navigate in, being able to access the platform and how to kind of work through the submittal process. We're not going to completely go through all of that today because we already have that session, but just to note, this is a resource for you if you haven't checked it out. It's probably roughly about 25 or 20-minute webinar that you can watch. It's free on demand, so feel free to pull it up and walk through it. It may give you some helpful tips and tricks in navigating the platform. There's more details on this page about how to create your login if you haven't done that. We've got quite a few questions that have come in via email about the login process, so that's another resource for you to look at. Guidance response document. If folks have emailed to ask for some sort of clarifications to criteria, this is a guidance document. I just opened it up so you could see it, but it's kind of likened to an addendum and a solicitation for those, since we're procurement practitioners, right? Like I wanted to make sure that if we were answering questions for one, that everybody had access to that same information, and so do our evaluators, right? So this document just answers some of the questions that have come in generally over the course of the last few months. They're organized by criteria with question and answer. It's a couple pages, about 4 pages now, so take advantage of reading that if you want to make sure that you're fully informed about any sort of general guidance that's been provided, so you have access to that. There's an instruction document on how to access the model submittals. We've gotten quite a few questions over email about how to access those, so this is a resource document that will guide you step by step of how to go in and access the model submittals. Please be reminded, though, that you must be an NPI member in order to access the model submittals. You would have to log in, and then you'll see it on the drop down to be able to access the model submittals. So I'm just going to, I'll log in and show you guys that as well, too. But that is a distinction between one of the benefits of membership is that you can only access those if you are an NPI member, right? So that's really a good value add, especially if you are preparing your criteria. So when I hit the drop down now, because I'm logged in, there is a link here for model submittals, and that's where you would go access those. I'm going to go back into applicant resources real quick, though. Mentorship, there's an opportunity for you to be mentored. If you are perhaps a new agency that this is your first year that you are applying for the award, and we're kind of late in the application cycle. The applications actually are due 2 weeks from today. But we do offer mentorship through our amazing AEP evaluators. So if you have just general guidance that you want, they're not going to pre-vet any of your narratives or criteria or anything like that. That is something that they are not going to be involved in doing. But if you have general questions about how to plan, you know, those types of things, how to organize things, likely a mentorship could benefit you. And so there's information there about connecting with a mentor if you're interested. And then again, we have the application and summary of changes document there. So I just wanted you guys to kind of be aware of all of those resources that are available to you on the website. And then one last thing under this tab, also the educational series, is where we house all of the webinars that we've done this year. So this is our fourth and final one. And if you scroll down through the page, you can see that all of the 3 previous webinars that we've done are available to access on demand for free. You just click watch the recording. We've also uploaded the slides, the slide deck from each of the sessions too, in case you want that. Again, they're all available for free on demand here on the educational series tab of the website. So if for some reason you missed one of those sessions and you're interested in watching it, this is how you would access it for free. I'm going to stop here and see if you guys just have any questions in general about the website before I get into the actual portal. If you have any questions about the website, I'm going to go ahead and check chat. It looks like there's some, who do we contact if we don't see model submittal link after logging in? This email address that's right here on the screen, you see questions, email aep@npiconnection.org. Go ahead and send an email to that email address and let us know the challenge that you're having. Please make sure that whoever's logging in has the actual NPI membership, because that is the connection to being able to access those model submittals. But if you want to, Doris, if you want to go ahead and just send an email to aep@npiconnection.org, we'll be happy to try to troubleshoot that for you to make sure that you have the access. Okay. Any other questions? I don't see any through chat. Is there anybody want to come off mute and ask any questions about the website before I move on? Okay, hearing nothing, I'm going to go ahead and transition over then to the portal. And I'm going to take you into actually the Orange County submittal, because that's the only one that I have access to is my own. So I'm just going to go through a couple quick tutorial things with regards to the application. When you log in and go into your application, you're going to notice this blue button over to the upper right to manage collaborators. If you have others in your agency that are going to be responsible to help uploading some of the information, you can add them as collaborators by clicking this blue button. And then you can just add collaborator, and it'll ask you for their email address. And once you add them in, you'll see them listed in the drop downs. You can have you have the ability to make them a primary, or at some point in the future you can remove their access if you need to. But it's a fairly quick and simple process, and that way they can also have access to your application to be able to upload any of the application submittal per criteria that you have. And then I would also just note that if you do have collaborators, take a look at these tips for the collaborators here, because it gives you some information here about their access. And just note the one in bold, that in order for collaborators to access the application, they must log into the application portal with either a member account or create a non-member profile to proceed. And we have the directions about how to create a non-member profile back on the AEP website under the application resources about how to create logins right here. So again, it just kind of points you back to that particular resource to be able to access that information. So again, just a little bit of information here about the collaborators. If that's something you're interested in doing to add to your team, these are just some tips and tricks for those folks to be able to get access to your page as well. And I'm going to spend just a brief few minutes on this particular home page. This is the first page of the application portal, and it's going to require some mandatory information to be populated before you are able to submit your application. So I'm seeing a lot of applications on the back end that are in process that have not yet populated this information. So just note that anything that has this red asterisk denotes a mandatory field. And so it will not allow you to put your application in the cart and submit it as final without having all of the mandatory fields populated. So that's just something to keep in mind. We do want you to be mindful of what these different areas are, because they are going to affect the name that's on the trophy when, not if, but when you're successful. So we want to make sure that in this field, you're putting the name that you actually want depicted on the trophy. And so ours, you can see, is Orange County Procurement Division, different than our agency name, which is Orange County Government. So this is specifically how we want the name on our trophy to be depicted. You're going to want in this section to list the procurement official. This is the chief procurement officer. Put all of their information in here and their email address. They will be the ones that are notified when you are successful. They will receive the notification to this email address. For the trophy shipping address, again, notice that all these are red asterisks, which means they're mandatory fields. Please note that this must be a physical address and not a PO box. We cannot ship the trophy to a PO box. So please be mindful when you're populating these particular fields that it is a physical address for which you will be able to receive the trophy and not a PO box. Phone number and website. And then we get down to the lower portion, which is the organization official. This would be the top official in your organization. It might be a mayor, it might be a president, it might be a chairperson, a city manager, whomever you want to identify as your top official within your organization. You'd want to populate their information here, as well as their email address. They also will receive the notification when you are successful. So you want to make sure that all of that's populated. Those are required fields. And so it will not let you submit your application as finalized without populating all of that information. So I just want to kind of make sure that we're going through specifically through this area to make sure you have an understanding of the different pieces of information that are required and how that information will be used to be able to share statuses. I'm not going to take you through every single criteria because we've done a session on that already. Again, there's an on-demand tutorial about how to go in and create your application. But I want to note a couple things because I think it's helpful as we round out the last 2 weeks of the application cycle, things to kind of be aware of as you're putting together your application. You can toggle in between any of these criteria. You don't have to do them in order, but you can. Anytime you are listing that you are saying, yes, I'm going to submit something and you upload, and once you upload it, this tab is going to turn green, provided that it is either a single criteria, like you see criteria 1, or if it's got multiple criteria, like criteria 4A through E, it's green because I uploaded a document to satisfy each of those. But you'll note that like for criteria 7A and 7C, it's still red. That doesn't mean that I didn't upload anything. It just means I didn't upload for all 3 of the sub-criteria, right? So I don't want you to be worried if for some reason some show red and you're like, wait a minute, I've uploaded something for that criteria. So I'll give you an example. For my criteria 8, it shows red, but I did upload something for 8A. But I did not upload something for 8B. So that's why it's showing in a red status, because I did not upload for both of the sub-criteria. So that's just something to keep in mind if you're looking for those red and green signals as kind of a go stop thing and saying, wait a minute, I didn't, why is it not green? It will only be green if you satisfy uploading for all of the sub-criteria. Uploads must be a single PDF document. You cannot upload in Word. You cannot upload in Excel. It says it here, submit your response as a single PDF file. And please note the maximum file size is 20 megabytes. So when you're in Adobe, if you have Adobe Acrobat Pro Professional, it'll give you the ability to optimize that PDF if necessary. So you can kind of take advantage of optimizing that PDF file if you need to reduce the file size, because you are limited to the single PDF at 20 megabytes. So it might be helpful to optimize if you feel like you're butting up against that file size, because it won't allow you to upload multiple documents. For any given criteria, you are required to declare if you are going to submit. You declare by saying yes, and if you're not going to submit, you have to say no. So again, this is a red asterisk denoting that it's mandatory. So it's going to be mandatory for every single criteria that you go through to either make a declaration of yes and upload the supporting documents, or no, and then move on to the next. I'm going to ask you, please, for the benefit of our evaluators, if you are not pursuing a criteria, please just select no. Do not say yes and then upload a document that says you're not pursuing it. We just want you to say no and move on to the next criteria, because it takes a lot of time for our evaluators. They're wonderful volunteers. They're giving of their time to dig in and do these evaluations. We don't want them to have to expend time to open up a document only to find out that you didn't want to submit for that criteria. Just please do us a favor and select no and move on to the next one. Only declare yes if you are actually going to upload a submittal criteria to demonstrate that you have successfully qualified under that criteria. That will be much appreciated by our evaluators. They're going to have a lot of applications that they're going to need to review, and so we want to make it as efficient as possible and not have to have them upload and read documents that are only establishing that you didn't intend to pursue that criteria. You can save as you go, so you don't have to upload everything at once. If you want to kind of pop in and go, okay, well, I'm going to upload 3 criteria today, you can. It's not showing on mine because I've already submitted mine, but it would either say save or save and go to the next. So you don't have to upload your entire application all at once. You can do it over time. We have quite a few agencies actually that are already in the process of uploading things for their criteria over the course of the last few months. You can choose to wait and do it all at once, or you can take your time and save and then go back in and pick up where you had left off. The response totals tab, I think, is a good kind of cross-check for you. So the response totals tab is going to total all of the points that you have uploaded for consideration, right? So I would say that this is a good opportunity for you to ensure that they match the intended total. So if some of you have done kind of the self-scoring worksheet that's identified on the last page of the application, or you have some sort of spreadsheet or mechanism where you're tracking how many eligible points you are applying for, make sure that it matches. Just go down and make sure that it doesn't identify as 0 for something that you intended to upload, and make sure that your overall total that you're applying for matches what you intended to submit for. And if for some reason it doesn't, then you'll want to go back through each of these and just make sure that you have successfully uploaded for all of the criteria that you intend to submit for. Once you've uploaded all of your criteria and your documentation to support it, the next area that it's going to take you to is to say save into cart. It won't allow me to show that to you now because, again, I've already uploaded and submitted the application for Orange County. But the next step after this particular tab, you'd see an option down at the bottom that says add to cart. And when you add to cart, the next step essentially is to pay, right? So I want to just give you kind of like a few little tips and tricks before you actually go into pay and save it into your cart. If you're a member, ensure that you're logged into the system before you go to pay so that it will populate with your member discounted rate. So we've had some folks that are members that hadn't logged in and they got charged a non-member rate. And so you want to be able to take advantage of that discount. For those of you that aren't members yet, there's still time to activate a membership for $130 to take advantage of the member discounted rate, which saves you $200. So, you know, we're all about cost savings as procurement professionals. It will save you $200 in the application cost to pick up a $130 membership. So that's like a net cost savings of $70. So at any time before you submit your application, if you're so inclined to be able to save that money, you can go ahead and just become a member for the $130. Make sure you're logging in as a member when you're doing your application so that when you get it into the cart, it denotes the member discounted rate of $495. I would also encourage you that before you actually put your submittal into the cart to go pay it, that you have somebody else within your agency or either your procurement operation or somebody like outside of procurement that you kind of trust as a good QA, QC, quality control person. Have a second set of eyes look at your criteria submittals and review those against the application submittal requirements just to get a fresh perspective, right? So like for those of us that are really near and dear to putting it together and doing the narratives and all those kind of things, sometimes we're so close to it that we might overlook something that somebody else might catch. So I always have a different set of folks come in and review my submittal documents and uploads against the criteria requirements before we actually go submit the application. And so you got to kind of allow time for that to happen. For those of you that submit quite a few criteria, again, there's a total of 200 eligible points. You have to successfully demonstrate 100 points through evaluation to be able to receive the award. And so I would say, take the time to have somebody just double check it and make sure that there's not something that may be omitted. Check all of your links. If you build in hyperlinks, make sure you check those, that they work, because that's another area that we would want to make sure you're not missing out on points for. For those of you who have applied previously, I would also encourage you before you submit to review the 2025 summary of changes that I talked about earlier. We want you to do that to ensure that your submittal accounts for all of the changes that took place year over year, right, from last year. So many of us use our narratives from last year and we update those, or we might just upload them without updating those. And so I would encourage you to double check and make sure that for any criteria that had a change noted in the summary of changes, that you are specifically reviewing those particular narratives to ensure that it factored in any of the changes that were made since the last application cycle. Ensure that your documentation can be validated within the timeframes prescribed in the criteria. So I think it's worth me going back and just kind of pulling up that summary of changes, just so that you can kind of note that. I always print this out and I double check it as I'm going through and working through the application to make sure for these particular criteria that I am adjusting my narrative and any supporting backup to account for the changes that were made. So that's a really important thing. We unfortunately do see applications sometimes that were just appear to be an upload from the previous year and didn't take into account the summary of changes, the things that changed. And so they didn't get the points for that criteria because it had not been updated accordingly. So please double check that and make sure that you are factoring any of those changes in for the criteria that you're applying for. And I would also denote that in here, it specifically states that multiple criteria have changed to clarify and further define the submittal requirements, and that changes are identified in italics. Some of them could be dates. So oftentimes they're date-driven requirements that say this documentation had to have occurred after January 1st, 2024. And that date will be italicized in the application and on the portal, on the platform. So again, make sure that any documents that you're uploading are representative of the time frame prescribed in the application. We do see this sometimes when we're evaluating in prior years, that the documents that were uploaded to supportive criteria were not updated to represent the time frame that we specifically prescribed in the criteria. So again, that's just one of those quality control things to think about. I know that we're all busy with our day jobs. This is an additional thing that you are pursuing to try to demonstrate excellence for your organization, which is amazing. And we'd hate for you to miss out on getting points for a criteria because of something like that, of not refreshing and making sure that it's within the time frame prescribed in the particular criteria. So make sure you're paying attention specifically to all of the specific criteria changes that have been made, but also any of the dates that have been updated. They're updated annually. Make sure that all your documentation is specifically able to be validated within the time frames prescribed within the criteria. I always liken this to an RFP process, right? So we're in procurement, we issue requests for proposals, and we specifically detail in the request for proposal the evaluation criteria and what proposers need to specifically submit to demonstrate their qualification, right? And so this AEP application really is no different than that. For any given criteria, it is identifying the particular submittal requirements that you have to submit to successfully demonstrate. And so please make sure that your narratives are addressing every single submittal requirement within the criteria. In this case, you see that we list 2 different submittal requirements. If you only submit one of them, then you're not going to achieve the points. You have to successfully submit and demonstrate all of the submittal requirements for any given criteria. And so that's something that we've seen in the past too, is that it's kind of a partial submission where they might, the application might upload a portion of the submittal, but not all of the submittal requirements. And so points cannot be granted to an application that doesn't specifically demonstrate all of the submittal requirements that are delineated within a particular criteria. I just was looking to see if I could find one. Yeah, here's a good example of one that's date-driven. If you look down under 4A, the second bullet says submit a summary tabulation of results for a survey that was conducted after January 1st, 2023. And you see that's italicized because that date's been updated. So if an applicant were to submit a survey information that was conducted in May of 2022, they would not receive points for this for a criteria, even if the rest of the balance of the information was accurate. By virtue of the fact that it fell outside of the prescribed time frame, we would not be able to give awards for that particular criteria. So it's a lot of attention to detail, but it is very similar to what we asked our proposers to do in RFP processes, is to specifically upload and satisfy all of the requirements to be able to demonstrate qualification. Ensure that all of the documents and screenshots that you upload are legible and that they directly relate to the submittal requirements. So sometimes in the application, there might be a lot of additional information that wasn't necessarily called out for in the submittal requirements. And so that leads our evaluators to have to kind of go through and decipher what's relevant to the particular criteria and maybe what might just be additional information that's been included. And I understand it, right? Because I understand that applicants want to make sure that they're putting in as much information that they feel would demonstrate the criteria. But sometimes it's a challenge to try to decipher what's relevant if it's just a lot of policy documents and it's not clearly kind of referencing the specific policy requirements that we had denoted in the submittal. So that's just an example. It might be helpful to highlight excerpts if you're going to upload a document where only a portion of it would apply to the criteria. Maybe just put like a box around it or highlight it somehow to help our evaluators know specifically which portions are relevant to the submittal requirements for that criteria. And like I said, have a second set of eyes going in to review your submittal requirements to make sure that they successfully match all of the submittal requirements for any given criteria. Again, looking at those date ranges, looking at anything that might have changed from the last application. And I think always give yourself a buffer if you have the ability to. You have to successfully demonstrate a minimum of 100 points to be able to get the award. But I would say for those of you, even if you're a first time, try to give yourself a little bit of a buffer if you can. Maybe 110 points if you're eligible for those, add those in, because if for some reason an evaluation committee says you didn't successfully this criteria and you're therefore not going to achieve 5 or 10 points, that could make the difference. If you're that close to the 100 points, it really could make the difference between your agency receiving the award and not receiving the award. So it's always good to try to have as much of a buffer as possible, provided that you can successfully demonstrate those criteria to get you maximized points. And I would say year over year, strive for improvement, strive for continuous improvement. I think this application is a great opportunity to kind of benchmark against national standards. And so I would say, take a look at this and use this as a guide to do a gap analysis and say, here the application we're meeting, what are we not yet eligible to meet, and what can we put in place to try to demonstrate that in the future? I think this is a really great tool to be able to challenge ourselves to continuously improve as procurement officers and operations. And so I would encourage you to take a look at your application year over year and see where you might be able to increase your points by implementing some processes potentially. I'm going to stop here because I see that Rebecca has her hand up. Rebecca, if you wouldn't mind coming off mute and let me know what your question is.
Hi, yes, I have a couple questions. I put one in the chat. For criteria 7C, we have one of the approved systems, OpenGov, and it basically states that we need to include a screenshot of the evaluation page, one screenshot. But are you guys looking just for that screenshot of like a project that we completed that has like scores on it, like one screenshot with that? Because you're just asking for one. And I know it's
right, one
approved,
screen.
but
Applicants, yeah.
I just want to make sure
That utilize
this
the
is the right
following.
one.
Applicants that utilize the following certified systems are required to submit one screenshot for each criterion showing the system that they use. So I would say for this particular criteria, you would show a screenshot of the actual evaluation and scorecard. You're not required to demonstrate all of the different submittal requirements here, since you have an AEP certified platform. But I would say make sure that your screenshot is representative of the electronic evaluation and automated scorecard to be able to demonstrate that particular criteria.
Okay, because if I do, there basically the one screenshot that basically shows all their scores in one, I guess that's the screenshot that I would use. I
Yeah.
would,
Yes.
okay, okay, got
Yeah.
it. And then I had a question regarding, criterion 17. I just wanted to kind of, I don't know if you know the answer or if in general,
Mhm.
those that sit on the NPI board know the answer to this. But do you guys find that most agencies can answer this question affirmatively? That the procurement officer has that just full authority to just award contracts without any governing approval? Because I'm kind of asking the question because I'm just wondering, like, if it's a best practice and not many of us are doing this, like how, I don't want to say like how is it the best practice, but like, is it something that we should strive to, potentially get to? And because kind of like, I know this is, different than like the CPPB or something like that, but typically if there's something that most of us are not getting, it kind of falls off the test in essence.
Yeah, and it's a good question, Rebecca. I have to share with you that this criteria is not something that I'm able to satisfy either. I don't have the ability to go in and compel my governing board to give me unlimited authority. And so this is just one of the criteria that I'm unable to pursue because I'm not able to fulfill it. But I'll tell you, Rebecca, that it really depends on the agency type. So take a state agency, for example, where they receive a budget allocation, right? And there's no board necessarily for them to go back to. So by virtue of their budget being approved, they have the authority to go in and do the award. So I think it probably does depend on the type of agency and the structure with which those approvals happen. There also are some higher ed agencies. I have a colleague that works for a university, and it's a similar type of situation there where once their annual budget is approved, the chief procurement officer is then authorized to be able to affect all of those awards provided they're within the overall budget that was approved. So I think structurally, there's some agencies that can accomplish this one. And then I think structurally, just like mine, there's some agencies that can't accomplish this one. And so when I talk about the gap analysis, Rebecca, and I kind of look at, do I have the ability to maximize points, in a future year? This likely isn't one that I'm going to be able to get traction for because it would be me taking an ask to my board of county commissioners to just bestow upon the unlimited award authority, and I don't think anybody's probably going to have an appetite to do that. So I choose to pursue other criteria to try to maximize and increase points where I think that I might have viability to do that. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, understood. And my last question was regarding criterion 18. We have a narrative, but I would say that everything is not in paragraph form. Is that like an issue? Because some things are kind of like, okay, here's a sentence here, a sentence there, and here are the numbers here. It's every little thing is not in paragraph form. Is that an issue or is that still suffice?
I don't know that I don't know that I'm visually following what you're saying. Is it because you have a lot of images or graphs in there too that are kind of breaking up the narrative, or what?
Kind of like, so we'll have like, for example, like, efficiency, and like that's underlined, and then there's like a sentence explaining like why this is efficient. And then like the next sentence would break down something else that's listed in the criterion and kind of give our explanation in a sentence. But the overall of what the issue was and what we've done are like in like 2 paragraphs. But everything is kind of broken down that way.
Yeah, I mean, Rebecca, I would say, provided that you are specifically addressing each of those questions, right? Because this criteria is above and beyond any of the other criteria. It's got to be something that's outside of the other criteria, and it specifically asks these questions, right? Like, Was it a new program procedure? Did you enact? How did it solve the problem? So I think provided that you're specifically answering those questions and that it's clear to the evaluators, like I would probably repeat the question and then provide some detail of how it answers that question, and then put the next question and how it detailed it with any sort of images. I don't think it doesn't necessarily state that it's required to be all in one paragraph or anything like that. Like, it's not that prescriptive, but I think I would say just make sure that you are providing as much detail as possible to clearly help the evaluators to identify, okay, this is the answer to the first question, this is the answer to the second question, this is the answer to the third question, right? Like, I think if you can kind of clearly spell it out, that really does help the evaluators, instead of them trying to kind of interpret, is this narrative the answer to that question? Like anything that you can do to help kind of clearly articulate it for the evaluators, I think would be helpful, so that they're not trying to guess which answers result to which narrative.
Understood. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to go to a couple of the questions that are in chat. I see a question from Lisa. It says, if our city's website was updated to reflect a new logo and color scheme, but the content and layout is the same, do all criteria need to be updated with screenshots of the new pages, or will earlier screenshots with the old logo and color scheme be acceptable if the criteria response is still valid from last year's application? And so, Lisa, what I'd say to you is, I would focus on links. If you have hyperlinks that are taking you to new pages that have been updated, just make sure the links work. The evaluators aren't going to question if a logo is old versus new. We've had some of those issues ourselves on our website where the landing page looks different, and we still use some of those old screenshots because they're still relevant and the links work. We don't go through and update all of those year over year. At some point you might want to update them just so everything's refreshed and updated, but I would be inclined to say that no evaluator is going to not give you points because you're using an old logo or an old color scheme. I think what they're really focusing on, Lisa, is the content that you're submitting to be able to support satisfying those submittal requirements for any given criteria. Okay. I see a thumbs up there, so I hope I answered that question. Rebecca, I think we answered your question about 7C. I'm going to go to Precious. She asked a question about 14, so let me click into 14, which is best value. Precious, you said that 14 asked to demonstrate when the solicitation was issued to the public, we are using OpenGov, so would a screenshot of the website suffice? We lost points last year, so I'm not sure what is needed. So Precious, you do have the ability to go into your historical data to look at any comments that the evaluators have left for you. And I'll just show you quickly, if you go to the NPI website, if you're logging in under AEP Award, you can go to historical application data. You may or may not have done this, so forgive me if you have, but if you go into AEP historic data, you can pull up your last year's scorecard. And if the evaluators left any sort of comments for you, you'd see that there to be able to know if they gave you context as to why. Last year, OpenGov was not an AEP certified firm. And so maybe they were. Let me take that back. I'm not sure if they were or not, so let me correct that. I'm not sure if they were or not. I don't recall offhand, and we use OpenGov too, but I don't know the reasons why you lost points, but I would say if it's asking for a screenshot within some of the submittal requirements, demonstrate when the solicitation was issued to the public. I think as long as you're using an OpenGov screenshot that has that specifically identifies the date that it was issued, that should be able to demonstrate this one part of the application that says documents published on or after January 1st, 2024. But make sure that you're looking at all these sub bullets here too, right? Because it's asking for these things, so you have to make sure that you're updating it. It wants the solicitation cover page with the date of issue, right? So I would say err on the side of caution. You could put the OpenGov web screenshot on there, but I would also say that you should put the solicitation cover page and the publication issue date in your submittal. Put the evaluation criteria pages detailing the weights in your submittal. Put the evaluation matrix and scoring summary with those weights demonstrating a best value in your submittal. Make sure that you are erring on the side of caution, and if you see any sort of sub bullets in there, I would not leave it to chance, Precious, that you would just put an OpenGov screenshot. I would make sure that you are specifically following each of these subs sub-bullets and specifically put a copy of the cover page in there. Just, you don't want to miss out on points. This is 10 points, so that's a big deal. So I would say just err on the side of caution and take the time to actually do the screenshots of these particular pages within your solicitation and put those in your submittal so that you don't run the risk of maybe not receiving the points again this year. Patty's question says, my locality implemented a new ERP on July 1st, 2024. I do not have 12 months of data. Will 10 months of data be sufficient for criteria 9? I'm just reviewing the submittal requirements for this criteria to see what it specifically says. I believe that it required it for the most recently completed fiscal year when it comes to sub-bullet 2 for submittal. So I would say that 10 months would likely not satisfy the requirement because it specifically requires a completed fiscal year's worth of data. And I don't know if you have data from your old ERP, Patty. I don't know if that's a reasonable thing to think you might have access to or not. But I would say that the likelihood of you getting the points for this criteria are probably not good because it does require all of the detail to be for a completed fiscal year. Thank you, Patty. Okay, so Precious said that they added executive summary, which includes the information, but told it was not demonstrated when it was issued to the public. So I wouldn't know, Precious, without looking back at your history of information. I would say don't just rely on a summary, but actually give the screenshot of those particular things for that criteria for best value. Make sure that you're putting in a screenshot of each of those things to be able to successfully demonstrate that you've met that criteria. All right, it looks like we have a question for 4B from Doris. Can you elaborate what transactional based means? The survey may be transactional based or cover a specified period of time. So this is for the external customer survey. I'm just refreshing on what it says in here, Doris, so that I can try to answer your question.
It's actually 4A, Carrie. Sorry, I mean 4A.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. It said 4. Got it.
Yeah,
okay,
for internal.
All right, so internal surveys. Okay. I'm looking to see where, okay, the survey may be transactional based or cover a specified period of time and shall be complete by internal customers on multiple procurement topics. I have to tell you, Doris, that's a good question. Ours, we use a specific period of time that we use. We generally issue it year over year. I'm honestly not sure what transactional base. I'm so sorry.
I was okay. Well,
I could give you more information. Honestly, not sure.
Thank you. I was asking because we had we had survey. Well, I don't know if we call it. It's not an official survey where you send out, you know, with multiple choice and stuff. But we've asked all of our internal departments on, you know, what it is that we can improve on, or what they want to talk about when we have like meetings for different groups and things like that. So I didn't know if that counted. So that's why I was kind of trying to see what transactional base mean, if that qualifies or not, because we've asked them to jot. It was like kind of a workshop. You know, let us know what we can do to improve or to help you to better communicate and you know, be productive and such. And so we asked them to take stickies and write it on the board and stick it on, and then, you know, we tally it up, and, you know, we go to each group and talk about, you know, what needs to be done or what will be better. So I didn't know if that counted as the survey for this, or something more, you know, formal, written.
You know, as I'm thinking about it, Doris, I'm thinking that like transactional base might be like a procurement specific, right? Like if you might put out a survey to your end user and ask for their feedback with regards to a procurement process, right? Like I think I'm speculating here, but I think transaction based, rather than covering a period of time, generally, like transaction based, I think means like for a particular transaction or procurement that you might have affected for them, right? Like getting their feedback on the procurement process that took place, I think is probably where that means. I think we have an opportunity to perhaps clarify it in the future, you know, since you're asking the question, and I am speculating, but I think to the best of my ability, that's probably what transactional based means is per a particular procurement. If you got feedback on a particular procurement. But what I would say, Doris, is if that's what you're looking to demonstrate on there, make sure that your narrative is as comprehensive as possible to explain how you feel like that satisfies the particular requirement for satisfying the survey. Because I think any sort of narrative that might help give perspective and context to the evaluators would be very helpful, especially in this case.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Makes sense. All right. I don't see any other questions in chat. Does anybody else have any other general questions that you want to come off mute and ask? I know we're running up close to the hour, but I want to make sure that you guys have the opportunity to get all your questions answered and asked. Okay, I don't see or hear anybody else asking questions. So again, I just want to thank you guys all for joining and being so interactive. I think this is really great, and I'm super happy to see so many people engaged and really wanting to put together your best effort for these applications. I cannot wait to celebrate you. I know that you guys are all going to do great. Very much attention to detail, and I'm looking forward to your applications coming through the portal. And I would say again, use that email address. If you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to email at aep@npiconnection.org. We've got a couple people that are actively monitoring those emails, myself included. So we try to be as diligent as possible to be able to get you answers, because we know you're running up to the time frame to get these submittals in place. Please be reminded that the deadline to submit your application fully paid for is May 15th at 5:00 p.m. Central Standard Time. So that's going to be the cutoff for the portal to be able to accept those in. Please don't wait till the last minute. We know how that goes, right? As procurement people, we have folks that are waiting till the last minute maybe to upload their proposals or bids in our e-procurement platform, and then something happens. So please don't leave it to chance. But you do have till May 15th at 5 p.m. To get it successfully paid and submitted in the portal. And once you submit it and pay for it, you don't have the ability to go back in and make any changes. So I just want to kind of reemphasize that. Make sure that you're abundantly sure that you've got everything uploaded in the portal that satisfies all of your requirements before you go initiate that payment through the portal. Because once you have submitted it, and it will have a little pop-up box that says, are you sure you want to submit this? Because it will be finalized and you won't have the ability to access it again, and it will require you to say yes. Once you click yes, you won't be able to go back into it and make any more changes. Doris, I see your hand up again. Did you have another question?
Yes, thanks, Carrie. I do. As far as after the submittal and the evaluation committee reviews the submissions, if you guys have a question for clarification, is that something that you guys reach out back to us, or is it, whatever is there and there's no more clarification?
Yeah, we're relying on what you submitted. There's not an ability to go back and do inquiries and clarifications. So that's why it's really important to kind of make sure that you're looking at all those submittal requirements and not leaving anything to chance, and putting everything in there that you feel satisfies that. They have a large workload to do to go through. I'll share with you guys that last year we got nearly 230 applications. And so that's a lot of applications to go through and evaluate. So there's just not time in the process to be able to go back and ask for clarifications and wait for that to come in. So we are going to rely specifically on all of the information that's contained within your application submittal.
Okay, thank you. That's good to know, because we were planning on submitting like a week or two, I guess, early, so that in case something comes up, we still have time to return to it and correct it if needed. But sounds like that's not the case. So better to use that time to
and so I would
flush through. Okay.
Yeah, and I would say, Doris, use that time to have somebody with a fresh set of eyes just look at it. I'll tell you that I put quite a few of our criteria together for our application, but I always have somebody else check it, and inevitably there's something that I have to upload and make a change to because I've missed it, right? So sometimes when you're the person that's that close to the application,
yes,
it's just, you might miss that. You might miss something that somebody else will catch with a second set of eyes. So if you have that ability to have, a time frame within your timeline that gives somebody else the chance to go review those and just kind of check and say, okay, this is the submittal requirement. Yes, I see it here. Yes, the dates match and everything. Like have somebody do that, because I think that really can make a huge difference.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you so much. This was helpful.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we're about running up on time. So I want to again thank you guys all for attending today. I want to wish you guys all the best of luck in your pursuit of the AEP award this year. I am so grateful that you guys are expending of your time and your talents to be able to pursue this for your procurement organization. And I look forward to seeing your applications and celebrating with you when you receive the awards. I hope you guys all have a great day. Thanks so much for joining again. Take care.